Hello friends, welcome back to I Made Me Think. Uh, Welcome to this video series tutorial for REST API testing and automation using Python programming and behave module in Python and BDD style of automation. So let's continue this session from the earlier video and let's uh, get started for the code walkthrough and review. And we will see uh, only 4 scenarios. Typically how to raise a get request, post request, put request and delete request. So just to mention, the REST API based web application is running in my local in this Tomcat local Tomcat, and it is running fine. So feature file, so as we have seen in feature file, so we have something called background, and these are the steps I want to execute before each scenario here. So the steps are basically getting ready, what is the user details, email, password, first name, last name, all those parameters, mandatory parameters, and this is the basic URL. If will be the basic URL if I host the application locally, which I have hosted in local Tomcat. So get request. So if we go back to our PPT and see HTTP request parameters, these are applicable for all these 4 methods which we will see in this demo video. So while raising HTTP request, we should have verb, that is, for example, for get request it will be get version, HTTP header, so user agent, so whatever is mandatory or whatever is required for our testing. So content type, accept type, connection timeout, cache setting and body parameters. So for get request and for the application which I am going to use, I will need endpoint. So this endpoint, basically this is an endpoint which will be added here. So basic URL will be this and my API endpoint will be this. So if you see, for post, for put, this is the endpoint, and for delete, this is the endpoint. Okay. So I need to set the endpoint. Okay, then set the header parameter, content type, then set the header parameter, accept type, so which will be application JSON, which is very normally this is the one which is used. Query parameter, as of now I don't require, so I make it as empty. Now here is the actual place where I'll raise the actual HTTP request, that is get request, and then validate the response code. So once again, going back to PPT, now I have raised the request. Now response parameters. So in the response parameter, so check the status code first with the correct flow. This is the flow I'll be using, so I'll be checking 4xx or 5xx, then I'll go for 2xx. I'm not using 1xx and 3xx. So in the response status code header analysis, so content type I'm checking, others I'm not checking because it is not required, and in the body, if the response code is fine, then in the body I'll just use it as, instead of text, it's a JSON response. There is no image, there is no, and there are links. So yeah, so valid HTTP response, and then check the status code, and in the response header check the content type, and the body should not be null, and body parse the body content and see it is expected. So when I raise a get request will have some header parameter and body parameter, and get request response will also have some custom header and some custom body parameters. So from where to get this request parameters and response parameters, that is specified in this PPT. If you go here and click this specification document, open this is an Excel file wherein everything is specified. So what is the request, if you give this request, what is the response, if you give this request, what is the response, all combinations are covered. Similarly, I have post request. So post request, so header parameter I have used as application slash x www form URL encoder, and header parameter accept type is application JSON. Body using basic user details. So the basic user details will come from this step. So basic user detail, name, first name, last name, email ID, all the stuff. Body parameter, okay. Now raise HTTP post request, and the same step. So response should be valid, response code should be this, in the response header content type should be this, body should not be null, and parse the body and see that if it is expected body response. Put request, so I am using this particular API or API endpoint called modify account profile detail, which is a put request, and steps are almost the same. So header parameter content type is application x www form URL encoded, header response accept type is application JSON, body parameter as per user detail, which we have seen in the earlier example, and I am just modifying, but the API says modify account profile details, so I am just modifying the first name and last name. So I am just modifying account profile. So basically the first name was this earlier, which I am going to change because I want to modify, and that is what the put request. So I am going to modify first name and last name because the API says, and because it is a put API, it is possible. So delete. So delete is basically I have used a delete method to sign out and not to delete the user. So sign out is an API endpoint. Header content type is this, header accept type is this, and rest of the requests are same. So here I am using query parameter. We will see this query parameter in detail. Response parsing steps are same. So response should be valid, it should, status code should be this, header content type should be this, body should not be null, and parse the actual response. So now let us see simple for get request. So I have this step definition for individual steps in the feature file, and let us see the import. So if you see, I am using this behave, and I am using this requests module to actually raise HTTP request and parse HTTP response, which are all are REST API, REST based. Okay, so I am using some dictionaries here to gather all the basic global general variables and some stuff. So here I am using this the data table here. So if you see, these all details will be considered as data table for this step, particular and value. So context.table, so it's a data table. What is data table, how to use it? So there are some videos you can find out online, you can Google it, or in my earlier videos also I have explained this in a bit simple manner. So let's have a look. So the set header parameter. So basically this is nothing but setting some dictionary parameters, and if you are using Python, and endpoint also I am setting. Okay. Yes, so this is the actual code where we write the requests module based setup. So requests.get is this particular way, and you pass the parameter, so URL with the endpoint, headers, params, and body. So this is how you pass the this is how you raise an HTTP request using Python and requests module. So once you raise the request, so headers are headers, parameters are basically the header query parameter. So apart from, as we have seen in the PPT, basic, so typical URL structure. So this is, so how to this is the get request, this is the URL port, and this is the endpoint, and these are the URL parameters. So I would request you to Google out what is URL parameter or a query parameter, which is basically as simple as adding something which at the end of URL. So we normally call it as URL parameter or query parameter. So post request also, so URL for post is will be made like this, will be cooked here, and then for post request there is no query parameter because post is something where we have this data, so it is a body of request, so that will be part of HTTP request body. Although we are not using parameter, but we need to still pass it, because if you see this HTTP request URL parameter is made clearer, so there is nothing in the dictionary with name this. Put request, so similarly put request, and delete request, so similarly delete request, and all this parameter based on the actual need. So you get the capture the response here. First to check if it is null or none in Python, none. Then validate the expected HTTP code. So expected response code, which is the colon D, so it's an integer. So what is the response to be expected for individual request? So for get, what is expected? For post, for put, and for delete, what is the expected response code? What is the expected response body? That all details are mentioned in this PPT. If you open this specification document Excel file, everything is mentioned here. So getting the HTTP response and response header, content type. So this is again a check that if the response code is fine, but the request header should also be as expected. Parse response body should not be null. Okay, there should be some response. First of all, there should be some response, and it should not be null. And then we'll see. Okay, there is some response. Now what is status code? If status code is fine, then what is the body? And then if when we parse the body, if you get the actual expected response, then we are done. So set, these are some initial setting we need to do for individual requests. So for post request, we need to set some body parameter. For delete request, again some of the parameters. So this is where we actually parse the HTTP response body once we are happy with the response code. So these are some predefined fields or part of JSON which are expected in the HTTP response, which is fine. So get, when we raise a get response, and when we raise HTTP get request, and when we get the response for that, and this, if response status code is happy, then the response body will be passed here with this particular JSON key value format. Similarly for post, similarly for put, similarly for delete. Okay, so this is how a simple framework we can design using behave plus Python programming plus BDD style of automation. So for demo purpose, let's first run this and see that if it works. So let me run the runner file. So this is the runner file, and let's first run it just to see everything's fine. If it is working, there should not be any failures. Okay, 4 scenarios are considered, which are get, post, put, delete, fine, and then 0 failed and 0 skipped. So okay, so these are the prints what I have printed in my automation framework. But for your individual requirement or for your individual need, we can skip it, or even for your individual requirement, if you want to optimize this feature file, or just simply 1 or 2 lines where we specify the header, we specify the response and response code, or many basic parameters which you can optimize for your individual requirement. So what this will do is it will get the sign up parameter, it will post, basically create an user, and then put request is to update the user detail, and delete request is to sign out. So REST API automation framework. So typical automation framework building blocks are header making. So there should be separate loosely coupled functionality where you pass all the parameters for your header, and you'll in as a completion you'll get, basically you'll need a method which will make a header for you, and that's it. So you can reuse that header, make header method for say different type of requests, so you can save time and further complication. Similarly body, so make a body using form parameter, bean parameter, matrix parameter, and so on. Then we should have a loosely coupled code, like I had once, kind of a switch case statement where you can just call that method with what type of method, just call that function with what type of method you want to call, and it will just call using switch case. So normally you can use this 4 CRUD methods, get, put, post, delete, and then the framework should also support JSON handling, so passing JSON. So basically parse HTTP response status code first, response header, parse the HTTP response header, basically if it is JSON, and then parse the HTTP response body, so that normally it will be a JSON file, so you can just parse it. Cucumber BDD support is very good to have, because for easy understanding of what testing is being done for stakeholders, for managers, for client partners, it is very easy for everybody to understand, so it is also a good feature. Server health check, server log analysis, yes. So when the complexity of the project increases, normally there are some connected REST APIs or cascaded APIs or stuff like that, so it is better to check the server health before running the automation. So it will have some initial time when you run it, for any time if you want to run it, it will have some initial time, say that okay 5 seconds are required to check for server health check, but once you do it, it will be forever. So consider if you don't do server health check and just run your test, and say some of the server is down or not up to the mark, then, and if it fails, then you will be in trouble. So it is always good to have this health check before actually running the automation, so it is a good practice. I have not done it because I am running only one server and I know it always works, so I have not done it, but we can implement it. Server log analysis, yes. So apart from parsing the HTTP response code and parsing the HTTP body, response body, it is also a good practice to analyze the server log, so that we are double sure that the request was logged in the server, and if there is an issue we can just copy the server logs and give it to the developer to fix it. I have not done it currently because I know it is working fine, but in my next framework I will implement it. Test data input using XML, using XLS or CSV or properties file or XML or anything. So the framework should also support parsing CSV files or properties file or Excel file or text file also, so that consider that there are 5 servers and they are interacting with each other, and for server number 3 we need to always give the hard-coded data, say hard-coded username and password, so that we can read it, we can put it in a CSV file or properties file, read it before actually starting the automation. So we need to support, automation framework should support different parsing the data from different source of input. It can be even a database also. You can just read some database and get those values and put it in a HTTP REST API request. Test result reporting, HTML format and Jira HP ALM. So HTML reporting, as I have explained in my earlier videos, if you open this folder will be generated when you run the tests. If you open this HTML file in a browser, you will find a little nicer report than the CSV or JSON report, so that it is easy to understand how many scenarios failed or passed or broken or whatever was some stack trace issue or any exception issue, that it will put in the XML file. So this is handy and quick to show it to the stakeholders. So the source code is available in the GitHub repository, and in the comment section you will find the link. And for more exciting videos, please like, comment and share my YouTube channel. And thanks for watching.